Earlier this week, Fox News host Tucker Carlson had a take that was very similar to my own radar from yesterday on the real reason behind this momentum in Congress to ban the Chinese app TikTok. Here's a bit of his monologue. Let's watch.
So one of the bills that would ban TikTok is being pushed, as we said, by senators in both parties. It's called the Restrict Act. Mark Warner of Virginia and John Thune of South Dakota, Democrat and Republican, introduced this legislation. Now, the bill is ostensibly about protecting American national security and ending, quote, foreign adversaries from interfering in our elections through apps like TikTok. Because, of course, election interference by Twitter and Facebook is no problem at all. But election interference from TikTok is totally unacceptable. Okay. But in reality, and you should know this if you're opposed to TikTok, as we are, this bill isn't really about banning TikTok. It's never about what they say it is. Instead, this bill would give enormous and terrifying new powers to the federal government to punish American citizens and regulate how they communicate with one another.
Though not set in stone, a proposal to bar TikTok is very much alive in Congress. The progressives on Capitol Hill, including Representatives AOC, Jamal Bowman, and Pramila Jayapal, have opposed their colleagues calling for the ban. House Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar told reporters that no one is, quote, closing the door on that option.
Hill Democrats aren't the only ones against the ban. In a recent op-ed, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, Republican, also came out against it. He wrote, "I hope saner minds will reflect on which is more dangerous, videos of teenagers dancing or the precedent of the U.S. government banning speech." It was a terrific op-ed by Rand Paul, hitting all the points I hit on in my radar the other day. And I was Tucker Carlson's monologue also touched on a lot of what I said about this Restrict Act, which really is a kind of Patriot Act for the internet. Look, it's an odd group of people to all be agreeing. Tucker Carlson, Rand Paul, AOC, Ilhan Omar had a pretty good statement about this. But you know what? Sometimes the people who don't fall into that squishy centrism of just saying, oh, yeah, we need the government to do more of this thing, but who are actually thinking through the consequences for civil liberties, and disproportionately, that's people who have been under assault by the government. So that can be people who are very much to the right and people who are very much to the left in the anti-authoritarian right, the anti-authoritarian left.
Absolutely.
They get it. Yeah, this is very dangerous stuff.
Yeah, so specifically, I think it's worth talking about what this act would do, because talking about it as a TikTok ban, I do think gets people who are maybe skeptical about TikTok, afraid of China. Tucker Carlson said in his monologue that he's actually not a fan of TikTok, but is opposed to the Restrict Act. And so I think it's worthwhile to talk about what it actually could mean for people. Under the Restrict Act, VPN users face 20 years in jail and $1 million fine if they evade U.S. internet censorship. They would put you in jail for 20 years for using a website or app that is operated by a foreign adversary. That's like the level of penalty that we're talking about here, which you can obviously imagine encountering accidentally. People all the time go around firewalls to download illegal stuff,
yes.
or access things from other countries.
You're talking about
you're in Canada and you want to use Netflix.
Virtual private networks,
yeah.
VPNs. My colleague at Reason, Elizabeth Nolan Brown, she has a great piece today about arguing exactly that she thinks the Restrict Act could very well be used to criminalize VPNs, which people use to have more data privacy.
Yeah.
People often use these things or to evade, or they live in places where there are authoritarian governments, they want to evade them, or you could use them for more privacy. And yeah, the Restrict Act wording is very broad, and it's all about foreign threats, the right of the government, the Commerce Secretary specifically, to take action against foreign threats. But we know that deterring foreign threats has been the argument that has been used for so many civil liberties violations, going back to the Patriot Act stuff, but then also over the last 6 years with respect to social media. So much of the narrative about how democracy is being eroded by Facebook in particular, Twitter and others, because it's been infiltrated by foreign actors. Reporting that turned out to be substantially false. But that argument was used against social media companies over and over again, American social media companies. So I'm worried, when are they going to say that Is the Secretary of Commerce going to say that, well, yeah, Facebook has too many Russian bots, so to deter this foreign threat, we get to take action against Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter or YouTube, the platform where are they going to say we're foreign threats because we try to fairly represent both sides of the Russia-Ukraine dispute, while understanding that Russia is the aggressor and Vladimir Putin is very bad, but we try to offer some pushback to the mainstream corporate press position.
Yeah.
Are we going to be described as a foreign influence and though YouTube can't host us?
It's very concerning. People didn't care when RT was pulled off of these social media platforms when the war started. People turned a blind eye to all kinds of left censorship that happened when the war started. There has been an anti-democratic effect on these platforms, which were really democratizing and which allowed small content creators that didn't have the imprimatur of big corporate behemoths behind them to have the same level of platform and access. And in the earlier days of YouTube, people saw enormous growth with their independent channels and could really compete with the mainstream news. Over the last few years, choices that have been made at companies like YouTube have gone directly to trying, it seems, to undermine the ability of smaller content creators to really compete. And they have algorithmically created preferences for the same mainstream institutions that people went to YouTube to escape.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing whatever's going on with Twitter, which again had an incredible democratizing effect. It wasn't as broadly used as a platform ever as something like YouTube, but it allowed normal people to do citizen journalism, to be able to confront journalists and political figures directly on the app in a really equal way. And now we're seeing moves by Elon Musk to make it so that your For You page only has verified users. You have to basically pay to be seen on the app, which he's framing as democratizing, but frankly, it quite obviously isn't. If you have to now pay money for your comments to have the same weight as somebody else on the app, if you wanted it to be democratizing, get rid of blue checks and don't require people to pay and let everybody be on the same footing. But that's not what's happening. And I'm concerned that there is now a routine trend of undermining what has been a democracy expanding trend on all of these apps and constraining it back so people are forced to go back into a hierarchical system that they had before. And TikTok, which is so popular and used by basically half of Americans, when you look at the number of TikTok videos that are circulating about what the Restrict Act would do and how powerful those are, you can start to get a sense of why it is in a lot of people's interest to shut down ordinary people's ability to communicate with each other and disseminate factual information with the ease that apps like TikTok allow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we know that some of the bad decisions that we've seen on the other social media companies was due to government pressure. So you can't tell me that you described what you described on YouTube has happened. The algorithmic prioritizing of the kind of mainstream voices that I would bet money that has to do with, in part, because of communications they've had to minimize dissident voices. And we've seen the email with respect to YouTube. With respect to Twitter and Facebook, I've seen emails. I know YouTube was in the same conference calls with the same federal officials as people from those organizations. So the government incentives have mattered to these companies. These companies have not broadly said, yeah, we're not going to listen to you, we're going to do whatever we want. They've said, okay, what do you want us to do? So whatever power you give the government on the TikTok front will absolutely, you'd be naive, it'd be insane. It'd be foolish.
Yep.
Naive self-denial to think that this same power won't be used to chill American dissent on the other platforms. So I'm very glad to see, some interesting, eclectic anti-authoritarians from all over the political spectrum, standing up, not necessarily because they personally like TikTok or they think everything about it is great and fine and dandy and there's nothing to see here, but because we know that, the Patriot Act was in response to something very bad, attacks by Islamic extremists on Americans. That doesn't mean we get rid of civil liberties and we end free speech, and 30 years from now we're going to be dealing with cumbersome, tyrannical, anti-First Amendment, anti-due process, anti-freedom provisions that we're stuck with because in our moment of weakness, we were gullibly led to approve them.
Absolutely. I'm going to get on TikTok while I still can. More Rising right after this.